Welcome to the Financial Flow. Please like and subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay up on our latest videos. Company loyalty is becoming extinct. How many people have worked for their current company for more than 10 years? According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, it is 29% of the population, which appears suspiciously high. Until you consider that the vast majority of this group is made up of workers on the verge of retirement, which is important to remember for later. The median tenure for all workers in the United States was slightly more than 4 years. In fact, multiple studies have found that full-time employees who stay with their employers for more than 2 years are paid 50% less. This is a significant disparity, especially when you consider the average of the loyal working group will be significantly inflated by executives with more tenure. This 50% figure is most likely exaggerated. So why aren't businesses doing something about it? Paying tens of thousands of dollars to advertise a position, interview candidates, onboard new employees, train them, and wait for them to get up to speed with their new role is clearly not sustainable. However, there are few reasons why companies no longer value employee loyalty. An abundance of skills, task standardization, globalization, broken corporate ladders, and of course, a constantly changing demand for various roles. Let's find out what employers value so you can make the most out of your career, which you'll most likely be doing until you're 100 years old. The first factor, destroying the appeal of company loyalty, is the most obvious, changing demand for different roles. As technology advances, it creates new jobs while simultaneously rendering others obsolete. Because of the rapid pace of change in the modern world, many people will end up working in jobs that did not exist when they first started working. Naturally, if you work in a role that can be easily replaced by a machine, or even a piece of software, you will be shown the door quickly, lowering the average tenure of the workforce. This is true in both directions. A bookkeeper who realizes they can make twice as much as a social media manager is also likely to leave. The abundance of skills available to employers comes next. Academic achievement is at an all-time high. A college graduate is no longer in short supply. Companies benefit from hiring these new employees for several reasons. For one, they are less expensive than their more experienced counterparts, but they also tend to be younger and more willing to work overtime to ensure that certain projects are completed. Companies like the Big Four accounting firms are an extreme example. They provide highly regarded graduate programs that are poorly compensated and require significant sacrifice. They provide these with the understanding that almost no graduates will remain with the company after committing their 2 years for that resume boost, and will instead look for higher paying jobs with a better work-life balance. According to a recent internal report, Deloitte had a staff turnover rate of about 13% annually, potentially costing the company $427 million in annual hiring and training costs and other indirect costs like project delays because of staff turnover. Although it may sound bad, both parties kind of understand what they're getting into. Deloitte benefits from a cheap labor pool to bill out for a few years, and those overworked juniors get to highlight their graduate program experience on their resumes in the hopes of landing a better position with a traditional business. The traditional businesses that employ these former graduate program employees adore this system for 3 reasons. The fact that they made it through 2 years at a Big Four accounting firm is a good sign that they can manage a sizable workload. They also possess some genuinely helpful knowledge. Because they were directly involved with their projects in the past, graduates who were doing consulting work in the pharmaceutical industry and later went on to work at a different company would already be familiar with the fundamentals of how the business operates. Perhaps even more crucially, they will be aware of how their rivals conduct business. Businesses know that maintaining a healthy supply of talent from their rivals is the best way to stay up at the top of their industry. When you take the role of globalization into account, this becomes even more significant. Because of the growth of offshore service centers and the enormous increase in skilled migration, businesses in almost every industry now have access to a broad and deep pool of talent. Companies frequently advertise even entry-level jobs internationally, especially now that everyone works remotely. Thirdly, these outside hires help businesses avoid disaster staffing chain reactions, which is especially important for higher level positions. Imagine a company that made a concerted effort to promote from within and only ever filled senior positions by doing so. Although it sounds wonderful, there are potential issues. Let's say a senior manager in the company decides to retire one day. Regardless, a floor manager from one of the 4 departments the senior manager oversaw is chosen to replace them, followed by a project team manager and a senior associate to replace the manager of the team. In theory, this is an example of moving up the corporate ladder, and many employees would be feeling pretty good about themselves. However, you might already be able to see the issues. Not only has this company lost a senior manager, but at the same time, 4 key positions are being filled by brand new employees. No matter how much experience a person has, a new senior role will require them to go through a learning curve. As a result, the business might find itself in a situation where projects get put off for months because an entire corporate vertical is completely inactive. But on a different contrast scenario, where the senior manager is simply replaced by an outside hire, not only would the business avoid all this nonsense, but it might also be able to entice a talented individual away from a rival. Even though the business is only winning twice, it's still a win because the workers will receive funding. You could say that this is nothing new, but the irony is that as businesses have pushed for flatter organizational structures, with fewer clearly defined roles, it has grown more challenging to identify exactly who does what. The famous phrase, "you're irreplaceable," has 2 interpretations. Fortunately for businesses, the process of finding external hires has become much simpler due to the standardization of tasks in the workplace. The use of computers in the workplace has greatly increased our ability to be productive. Just 2 decades ago, it might have taken a team of bookkeepers weeks to create a spreadsheet. Today, an intern can do it in an afternoon using Excel. Beyond maximizing man hours, it has also greatly increased the uniformity of most roles. There is likely a software suite that is used by the majority of businesses, regardless of whether you work in sales, customer service, administration, accounting, or anything else that involves using a computer. As a result, an onboarding process that once required weeks to complete can now be completed in a matter of days. The position of bank manager is the most extreme example of this. Being a bank manager was a big deal a few decades ago, almost on par with being a physician or an attorney. This was since bank managers had to choose who to lend money to and who not to. In the era of credit scores, this may seem simple, but back then, it required a very thorough understanding of how businesses operate, as well as the local, state, and federal economies, as well as laws and regulations, as well as the bank's own financial situation. Additionally, in order to win their business, local business owners and the community at large were urged to cultivate strong relationships with bank managers. They do not decide who receives a loan and who does not. This is handled by an offshore credit department, which then enters data into a computer program to determine whether to approve or deny a request. In those days, replacing a bank manager was a big deal because their position depended so heavily on relationships and day-to-day experience that it was almost necessary to replace them with someone else from the branch. Today, replacing a bank manager is as simple as posting a job opening and waiting for a long line of eager new applicants to arrive. Just remember that even though everything sounds gloomy, it doesn't have to be depressing. The idea of a satisfying, safe job for a 40-year career is likely dead, but at least the current state of affairs is accurate. Businesses are there to make as much money off of you as possible until a better option comes along, and you are there to make as much money off of a business as possible. The statistics are accurate. It will benefit you. The only way to climb the corporate ladder, as we have seen, is by leaping over them. Your employer will try to take advantage of you. After all, they're a business, not a charity. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Have a good one.